The court banished the orphaned Omega, unaware she was the lost daughter of the first Luna. The rain hammered against the courthouse steps as 17-year-old Maya Sullivan clutched the single garbage bag containing everything she owned. The judge's words still echoed in her ears. "By order of this court, you are hereby expelled from the Crescent Valley Pack territory. You have 72 hours to vacate." She stood frozen, watching the heavy oak doors close behind her, sealing her fate with a finality that made her chest ache. She had grown up in the Pack's group home, a grey building on the edge of town, where unwanted children were housed until they turned 18 or found their place in the hierarchy. Maya had never found hers. Without a wolf to shift into, without a family name to claim, she was nothing in their world. An Omega, the lowest rank, barely tolerated and easily discarded. The charges against her had been fabricated, she knew that much. Someone had planted stolen items in her locker at school, and when the Alpha's son pointed his finger at her, the court didn't hesitate to believe him over a nobody like her. If you're watching this, please subscribe and leave a comment telling us where you're from. We'd love to hear from you. Now, let's continue with Maya's journey. The bus ticket in her pocket would take her to Portland, 300 miles away from the only home she'd ever known. As she descended the courthouse steps, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles, Maya felt the invisible threads that had connected her to the Pack territory begin to snap, one by one. It hurt more than she'd expected. Even though they'd never wanted her, leaving felt like tearing off a piece of her soul. The group home director, Mrs. Hendricks, had pressed $200 into her hand that morning, with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she'd whispered. "I tried to speak for you, but they wouldn't listen." Maya pulled her thin jacket tighter against the November cold and started walking toward the bus station. The streets of Crescent Valley looked different now that she was seeing them for the last time. The coffee shop where she'd worked weekends, the library where she'd spent countless hours hiding from the cruelty of her peers, the park where she'd sat alone, watching families play together, all of it was becoming memory. She wondered if anyone would remember her once she was gone. Probably not. She'd been invisible here for so long that her absence would barely register. The bus station was nearly empty when she arrived. An elderly couple sat in the corner, and a young man with headphones dozed against his duffel bag. Maya bought her ticket and sat in the hard plastic chair, watching the rain streak down the windows. In 6 hours, she'd be in Portland with no plan, no connections, and no idea how to survive in a human city. The Pack had been cruel, but at least it had been familiar. Now she was heading into complete uncertainty. "Crescent Valley?" a voice asked. Maya looked up to find a woman in her 40s standing beside her, a kind smile on her weathered face. "I couldn't help but overhear when you bought your ticket. I'm heading to Portland, too. First time leaving home?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. The woman sat down beside her, setting a worn backpack at her feet. "I'm Carol," she said. "Ran away from my small town when I was about your age. Thought the city would be easier. In some ways it was, in others it wasn't. You got people waiting for you there." "No," Maya managed to say. "Just me." Carol studied her for a moment, and Maya saw something like recognition in her eyes, the look of someone who understood what it meant to leave with nothing. "The Rose Haven shelter on Morrison Street," Carol said, pulling a pen from her bag and writing on a napkin. "It's clean, safe, and they help you find work. Tell them Carol Rodriguez sent you. The director's an old friend." Before Maya could thank her, the announcement came for their bus. They boarded together, and Carol settled into the seat across the aisle. As the bus pulled away from Crescent Valley, Maya pressed her forehead against the cold window and watched the town disappear into the rainy night. She didn't cry. She'd learned years ago that tears changed nothing. Portland welcomed her with grey skies and the smell of rain on pavement. The city was overwhelming in a way Crescent Valley had never been. Tall buildings crowding the sky, streets packed with cars, people everywhere moving with purpose. Maya followed Carol's directions to Rose Haven, a 3-story brick building in a quiet neighborhood near the river. The woman at the front desk, a heavy-set black woman with kind eyes and graying dreadlocks, smiled when Maya mentioned Carol's name. "Any friend of Carol's is welcome here," she said. "I'm Denise. You look exhausted. Honey, let's get you settled and fed. Then we can talk about what comes next." The shelter was nothing like the group home. It was clean and warm, with colorful murals on the walls and the smell of cooking food drifting from the kitchen. Denise showed Maya to a small room with 2 beds, explaining that her roommate worked nights and they'd barely see each other. The bed was more comfortable than anything Maya had slept on before, and that night, for the first time in weeks, she slept without nightmares. The next morning, Denise sat with her over breakfast and laid out the shelter's program. They could provide housing for up to 6 months while Maya found work and saved money. They offered job training, helped with resumes, and had connections with employers willing to hire young people starting over. "You're not the first kid to show up here with nothing," Denise said gently, "and you won't be the last. But you've got to be willing to work hard and accept help. Can you do that?" Maya nodded. Work had never scared her. It was trust that was difficult. But something about Denise's straightforward manner made her want to try. Within a week, Maya had a job at a busy diner called the Morning Cup, washing dishes and bussing tables. The work was hard, and her feet ached by the end of each shift. But the owner, a Greek immigrant named Sophia, was patient with her inexperience. The other workers were a mix of students, artists, and people like Maya, folks trying to rebuild their lives one shift at a time. Nobody asked too many questions, and Maya was grateful for that. Her roommate, Jasmine, turned out to be a nurse's aide who worked the overnight shift at a nearby hospital. They'd pass each other in the mornings and late evenings, exchanging tired smiles and occasional words. Jasmine was the one who noticed that Maya never received mail, never mentioned family, never had anywhere to go on her days off. One evening, she invited Maya to join her for dinner at a neighborhood Thai place. And over pad Thai and spring rolls, Maya found herself talking, really talking, for the first time in years. "I grew up in foster care too," Jasmine said when Maya hesitantly shared pieces of her story, carefully editing out anything about packs and wolves. "It's hard, feeling like you don't belong anywhere. But you're building something now. I can see it. You're stronger than you think." The words settled into Maya's chest like warmth. She wasn't used to encouragement, wasn't used to people seeing anything in her worth praising. But Jasmine's belief felt genuine, and Maya held on to it during the long, exhausting days that followed. Winter arrived in Portland with freezing rain and early darkness. Maya added more hours at the diner, working doubles when Sophia needed help. She saved every dollar she could, opening a bank account for the first time in her life and watching the small balance grow week by week. Denise helped her enroll in online GED classes, and Maya studied late into the night, determined to finish the high school education that Crescent Valley had denied her. The months passed in a blur of work and study. Maya learned the rhythm of the city. The best bus routes, the cheapest grocery stores, the library branches that stayed open late. She learned how to budget, how to cook simple meals, how to navigate the human world without the pack structure she'd always known. It was harder than she'd expected, but also freeing in ways she couldn't have imagined. Nobody here cared that she couldn't shift. Nobody ranked her or dismissed her. She was just Maya, and that was enough. By spring, she'd saved enough for a security deposit on a studio apartment in an older building near the river. It was tiny, just a main room with a kitchenette, a small bathroom, and one window overlooking a parking lot. But it was hers. The first night she slept there, on an air mattress borrowed from Jasmine, Maya cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that she'd done it. She'd survived leaving Crescent Valley. She'd built something from nothing. Sophia promoted her to server that summer, which meant better tips and more interaction with customers. Maya was nervous at first. She'd never been good with people. But she discovered that the simple act of bringing someone their coffee and breakfast created brief moments of connection that felt meaningful. Regular customers started requesting her section, appreciating her quiet efficiency and genuine smile. An elderly couple, the Hendersons, came in every Saturday morning and always left her a generous tip along with words of encouragement. "You remind me of our granddaughter," Mrs. Henderson said one morning. "She's about your age, off at college now, works as hard as you do. You're going to do just fine in life, sweetie." Maya's GED test came in late August. She passed with high scores, and Denise helped her research community colleges. The idea of higher education had never seemed possible before, but now it shimmered in front of her like a door opening to a future she'd never dared imagine. She could study business or social work or anything she wanted. For the first time, her life felt like it belonged to her, but the past has a way of returning when you least expect it. It was a cool September evening when Maya's world shifted again. She was walking home from her shift, earbuds in, tired but content. The street was quiet, the sun setting behind the buildings in shades of orange and pink. She didn't notice the car that had been following her for 3 blocks, didn't sense the presence until a voice called out behind her. "Maya Sullivan?" She turned to find a woman standing beside a black sedan. She was tall and striking, probably in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She wore an expensive-looking coat and carried herself with the kind of confidence that spoke of authority. But it was her eyes that caught Maya's attention. They were the same unusual shade of amber that Maya saw every time she looked in a mirror. "Who's asking?" Maya said cautiously, her hand moving to her phone in her pocket. "My name is Dr. Eleanor Whitmore," the woman said, taking a careful step closer. "I've been searching for you for a very long time. I realize this must seem strange, but I need to speak with you about your parents, your real parents. Would you be willing to give me just 30 minutes of your time?" Maya's heart hammered in her chest. She'd long ago accepted that she'd never know where she came from, that her origins would remain a mystery. The group home had no records beyond her appearance on a packed doorstep as an infant. "I don't know anything about my parents," she said, "and I'm not interested in scams or—" "You have a birthmark," Eleanor interrupted gently, "on your left shoulder blade. It's shaped like a crescent moon. And your eyes, that particular shade of amber, is exceptionally rare. It's genetic, passed down through a very specific bloodline." Maya's hand instinctively moved to her shoulder. Even though the birthmark was hidden beneath her shirt, she'd always had it, had always wondered what it meant. "How do you know that?" "Because I've been looking for the child who would have those markers for 17 years, Eleanor said. "Ever since the night Catherine Silvermoon disappeared with her infant daughter during the Pack Wars. Ever since the night the first Lunar of the Silvermoon Pack vanished without a trace." The name meant nothing to Maya, but the tone in Eleanor's voice, heavy with history and loss, made her pause. "I don't understand," she said. "I'm not part of any important bloodline. I'm just an Omega. I couldn't even shift." Eleanor's expression softened with something that looked like pain. "That's because you were never an Omega, Maya. You were suppressed. Someone wanted you to believe you were powerless, wanted you hidden and forgotten, but you're not. You're Catherine Silvermoon's daughter, and that makes you one of the most important people in our world. Please, just give me a chance to explain. There's a coffee shop around the corner. Let me buy you a cup and tell you your story. After that, if you want me to leave, I will." Every instinct Maya had developed over the years screamed at her to walk away. This had to be a trick, a con, another way for someone to use her and discard her. But those amber eyes, so like her own, held something that looked like hope. And deep in her chest, in a place she'd learned to ignore, something stirred, a feeling she couldn't name, like a door unlocking inside her. 30 minutes, Maya said. But we stay in public, and if I don't like what I hear, I'm leaving. Eleanor smiled, and it transformed her face. That's fair. Thank you for listening. The coffee shop was one Maya knew well, a place she sometimes stopped for a latte before work. They settled into a corner booth, and Eleanor ordered them both coffee before pulling a worn leather folder from her bag. Inside were photographs, old ones, some printed from what looked like newspaper articles, others personal snapshots. "This is your mother," Eleanor said, sliding a photo across the table. "Catherine Silvermoon, first Luna of the Silvermoon Pack. This was taken a year before you were born." Maya stared at the photograph. The woman looking back at her could have been an older version of herself. The same delicate features, the same amber eyes, the same dark hair. Catherine stood beside a tall, handsome man with kind eyes, both of them dressed formally, clearly at some kind of ceremony. The resemblance was undeniable and shocking. "I don't understand," Maya whispered. "If she was first Luna, why was I abandoned? Why was I left at a group home?" Eleanor's jaw tightened. "You weren't abandoned, Maya. You were hidden, protected. The Pack Wars of 17 years ago were brutal. The Silvermoon Pack was one of the most powerful in the Pacific Northwest, and your father, Alpha Marcus Silvermoon, was working to unite the regional packs under a new accord. Many feared the changes he proposed. There were those who wanted to maintain the old ways, the strict hierarchies, the territorial divisions." She pulled out more photographs. Images of buildings burning, newspaper headlines about mysterious deaths and disappearances. "Your father was killed in what was officially ruled an accident, but many of us knew it was assassination. Your mother went into hiding with you immediately after. She was 8 months pregnant when Marcus died, and she gave birth to you in secret. For 5 months, she kept you hidden, moving from safe house to safe house." Maya's hands shook as she picked up another photograph. This one showed Catherine holding an infant, her, with a look of fierce love on her face. "What happened to her?" "Oh, we don't know," Eleanor admitted, and the pain in her voice was raw. "One night she contacted me, I was her personal physician and friend, and said she'd discovered who was behind the assassination. She said she was coming to me with you and with proof. But she never arrived. We found evidence that she'd been pursued, that there had been some kind of confrontation. But we never found her body. And we never found you, until now." "But I was found," Maya protested. "The Crescent Valley Pack found me on their doorstep. Someone left me there." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Someone who knew you needed to be hidden somewhere. No one would look for the daughter of the first Luna. Someone who knew that an infant, without papers, without identification, would be absorbed into the foster system and forgotten. The Crescent Valley Pack was small, isolated, deliberately traditional. They would have had no contact with the larger pack networks, no knowledge of what was happening in the regional politics. It was the perfect place to hide you." Maya's mind reeled. Everything she'd believed about herself, about her origins, was crumbling. "But I couldn't shift," she said desperately. "Omegas can't shift. That's proof I'm not—" "Omegas absolutely can shift," Eleanor interrupted. "That's a lie perpetuated by packs who want to justify their mistreatment of certain members. True Omegas are actually incredibly rare and powerful. They're empaths and healers, crucial to pack stability. What you experienced was suppression, likely caused by a drug or herb mixture given to you as an infant and possibly continued through your childhood without your knowledge." She pulled out a medical journal article. "It's a horrible practice, but it exists. Children are drugged to prevent their wolves from emerging, usually because someone fears their power or wants to control them. The effects can last years, even into adulthood, if administered consistently. I suspect that's what happened to you. Someone wanted you powerless, wanted you to believe you were nothing. The rage that flashed through Maya was so intense it surprised her. Years of humiliation, of being treated as lesser, of believing she was broken, and it had all been a lie. Someone had deliberately crippled her, stolen her birthright, condemned her to a childhood of pain and loneliness. Who? She demanded. Who did this? That's what I'm trying to discover, Eleanor said. I have theories, but no proof yet. What I do know is that you're in danger, Maya. If the people who killed your father and made your mother disappear discover that you've survived and that you're coming into your power, they'll try to eliminate you. That's why I've been searching so carefully, so quietly, and why I need your help. Maya leaned back against the booth, her coffee forgotten and going cold. This was too much, too fast. Yesterday, her biggest concern had been whether she could afford both tuition and new work shoes. Now this stranger was telling her she was some kind of werewolf royalty with a target on her back. I'm not who you think I am, she said quietly. I'm just a girl who works at a diner and barely graduated high school. I don't know anything about pack politics or power or any of this. You're exactly who I think you are, Eleanor countered gently. And I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I'm asking you to discover who you've always been beneath the suppression and lies. Your mother was brilliant, compassionate, and strong. She changed the Silver Moon Pack for the better, advocated for those without voices, challenged traditions that harmed people. You have her blood, Maya. You have her potential. What do you want from me? Maya asked. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose her words carefully. I want to help you access your wolf, which means detoxifying your system from whatever suppression drug is still in your bloodstream. I want to teach you about your heritage and your mother's work. And when you're ready, I want your help in finding out what really happened to Catherine and bringing those responsible to justice. But all of that is your choice. If you want to walk away and continue your life here, I'll respect that. I'll make sure you're protected from a distance, but I won't force anything on you. Maya looked down at the photographs scattered across the table, at the face of the mother she'd never known. Catherine's eyes held such intelligence and warmth. What had her last thoughts been? Had she hoped that her daughter would survive, would find her way back to the truth someday? If I do this, Maya said slowly, if I agree to explore this, I need promises. I need to be able to leave if I want to. I need to know that I'm making my own choices, not being manipulated or used. I've had enough of people controlling my life. You have my word, Eleanor said solemnly. You're Catherine's daughter, which means you're under my protection as your mother's chosen physician and friend. But more than that, you deserve autonomy and truth, both of which I'll give you freely. Maya took a deep breath. She thought about the life she'd built in Portland. Small, but hers, safe, but limiting. She thought about the questions that had haunted her since childhood, about the hole in her chest where her identity should have been. She thought about her mother's face in that photograph, holding her infant daughter with such love. And she thought about the wolf that had never emerged, the part of herself that had been stolen before she could even know what she was missing. Okay, she said, show me. The detoxification process took 3 months and was more difficult than Maya had imagined. Eleanor had rented a cabin in the mountains outside Portland, far from both human and pack settlements, where Maya could go through the process safely. The drugs that had suppressed her wolf for 17 years had integrated into her system at a cellular level, and purging them required careful medical supervision and intense physical protocols. Maya took a leave of absence from the diner, telling Sophia she was dealing with a family medical situation. It wasn't quite a lie. She sublet her apartment to a friend of Jasmine's and moved temporarily to the cabin with Eleanor and a small team of medical professionals Eleanor trusted. The first week was the worst. As the suppressants began to leave her system, Maya experienced intense flu-like symptoms: fever, chills, nausea, body aches. She couldn't eat, could barely sleep, and spent most of her time in a miserable haze of discomfort. Eleanor and her team were constantly present, monitoring her vitals, adjusting treatments, offering comfort when the pain became overwhelming. "This is your body remembering what it was meant to be," Eleanor explained during one particularly difficult night, placing a cool cloth on Maya's forehead. "The wolf inside you is waking up after being forced into hibernation. It's fighting to emerge, and that fight is what you're feeling." By the second week, the physical symptoms began to ease, but they were replaced by something stranger. Maya started experiencing sensory changes. Sounds became sharper, smells more distinct, her vision clearer. She could hear conversations happening in other parts of the cabin, could smell the pine trees half a mile away, could see individual leaves on distant trees. It was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time. "Your wolf senses are activating," Eleanor said with a smile. "This is good progress. Your body is remembering its true nature." The emotional changes were harder to manage. Maya found herself experiencing intense mood swings, rage that came from nowhere, joy that felt too big for her body, grief that knocked her flat. Eleanor explained that wolves experienced emotions more intensely than humans, and Maya was essentially learning to process feelings with an entirely new neurological framework. "Let yourself feel it," Eleanor coached during a session when Maya was crying for reasons she couldn't articulate. "Don't fight it or try to control it. Your wolf experiences the world differently than your human side. You need to learn to integrate both parts of yourself." By the third month, the physical detoxification was nearly complete. Maya's body had adjusted to its new reality, and she felt stronger than she ever had in her life. But the wolf itself, the ability to shift, remained elusive. Eleanor assured her this was normal, that the shift would come when Maya's body and mind were ready. But Maya felt impatient. She'd been promised her wolf, and she wanted to meet it. It happened on a cold December night, 3 months almost to the day after she'd arrived at the cabin. Maya had gone for a walk in the woods, needing space to think and process. The moon was full overhead, and the forest was beautiful in the silver light, branches heavy with snow, the air crisp and clean. She stood in a clearing, looking up at the stars, and felt a familiar frustration building in her chest. "Where are you?" she whispered to the wolf she'd never known. "I know you're in there. I know you're real. So where are you?" The response came not as words, but as a sensation, a presence blooming inside her consciousness, ancient and powerful and utterly hers. Maya gasped as she felt her bones begin to shift, felt her body responding to instincts she didn't know she possessed. The transformation hurt, but it was a good pain, like stretching muscles that had been cramped for too long. When it was over, Maya stood on 4 legs instead of 2. Her senses exploded with information. She could smell individual animals in their dens, could hear the heartbeat of a rabbit hundreds of yards away, could see in the darkness as clearly as in daylight. She looked down at her paws, large and powerful, covered in silver-grey fur that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. Her wolf was here. Her wolf was real, and it was magnificent. Maya threw back her head and howled, the sound echoing through the mountains. It was a cry of joy and rage and triumph, the voice of someone who had been silenced finally finding her sound. In the cabin, Eleanor heard it and smiled through tears, knowing that Catherine's daughter had finally come home to herself. Over the following weeks, Maya learned to control her shifts, to move between human and wolf form with increasing ease. Eleanor taught her about pack structure, about the politics and history of the werewolf world, about her mother's legacy. Maya devoured the information, hungry for knowledge about the heritage that had been stolen from her. "Your mother believed that the old pack systems were breaking down," Eleanor explained one evening as they sat by the fire. "Too much emphasis on rank and dominance, not enough on community and cooperation. She advocated for reforms, treating Omegas with respect, allowing women into leadership positions, forming alliances with human communities. Many older wolves saw these ideas as dangerous and radical." "Is that why she was killed?" Maya asked. "Because she wanted change?" "Partly," Eleanor said. "But I think there was something more specific. In the weeks before your father's death, Catherine was investigating something. She became secretive, anxious. She told me she'd discovered information that would change everything, but she wouldn't tell me what it was until she had proof. I believe she found that proof, and that's why she was hunted." Maya stared into the flames. "And whoever killed my parents has been in power this whole time, thinking they got away with it." "Yes," Eleanor confirmed. "The Silver Moon Pack was absorbed into the larger Cascade Pack after your parents died. Alpha Richard Thorne took control, claiming he was honoring your father's vision of unity, but he's actually rolled back many of Catherine's reforms. He's traditional, hierarchical, suspicious of outsiders. Many believe he was behind the assassination, but there's never been proof." "Then we find proof," Maya said, her voice hard. "We find out what my mother discovered, and we expose whoever did this." Eleanor studied her carefully. "That will be dangerous, Maya. These are powerful people who've maintained their secrets for 17 years. They won't hesitate to kill again." "I know," Maya said, "but I've been running my whole life without even knowing it. I'm done running. My mother deserves justice, and the people living under corrupt leadership deserve better. If I have her power, I'm going to use it the way she would have wanted." The determination in her voice was absolute, and Eleanor recognized Catherine in that moment. The same fierce commitment to what was right, the same refusal to back down from injustice. "Then we'll need allies," Eleanor said. "People we can trust who knew your mother and believe in what she stood for. I know a few who've been waiting years for someone to challenge Thorne's authority. Let me reach out." Over the next several weeks, Eleanor made careful contacts. Old friends of Catherine's, wolves who had gone into hiding or exile after the Silver Moon Pack's fall, people who had been waiting for a sign that things could change. They met in secret, in diners, in parks, in anonymous locations, and slowly, carefully, a network began to form. Maya met Sarah Chen, who had been Catherine's closest friend and advisor. She met Marcus Washington, a former pack enforcer who had quit rather than serve under Thorne. She met James O'Connor, a lawyer who had represented wolves in territorial disputes and had his own suspicions about the assassination. Each person added pieces to the puzzle, shared memories of Catherine and Marcus, offered skills and knowledge to the cause. "Your mother saved my daughter," Sarah told Maya during one of their meetings, tears in her eyes. "She challenged the pack elders when they wanted to exile my girl for being gay. She stood in front of the whole council and said that love was never a reason for punishment. Because of her, my daughter got to stay with her family. That's who Catherine was, someone who protected people." These stories became precious to Maya. They painted a picture of her mother as a real person, complex and flawed, but fundamentally good. She learned that Catherine had loved gardening, had been terrible at cooking, had had a laugh that could light up a room. She learned that Marcus had been gentle despite his strength, that he'd read poetry and played guitar, and had been completely devoted to his mate. As Maya prepared to confront her past and challenge those who had destroyed her family, she felt herself changing in ways that had nothing to do with shifting between forms. She was becoming someone new. Or perhaps someone she'd always been meant to be. Not the powerless Omega who had been banished from Crescent Valley, not just a diner waitress trying to survive, but Maya Silvermoon, daughter of the first Luna, carrying her mother's legacy forward. But before she could move forward, there was someone she needed to confront from her past, someone who had known exactly who she was and had kept her suppressed and powerless, someone she had trusted. "I need to go back to Crescent Valley," Maya told Eleanor one morning. "There's someone there who has answers, and I need to hear them face to face." Eleanor frowned. "That's risky. If the wrong people find out you've accessed your wolf—" "I'll be careful," Maya promised, "but I need to do this. Mrs. Hendricks, the woman who ran the group home, she was always kind to me, but she also made sure I took vitamins every day, watched me swallow them. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now I realize those weren't vitamins. She was giving me the suppressants. She knew what I was and kept me powerless. I need to know why." The drive back to Crescent Valley took 4 hours. Maya sat in the passenger seat of Eleanor's car, watching the familiar landscape roll by with new eyes. Everything looked smaller than she remembered, less threatening. The packed territory that had seemed so imposing when she was powerless now felt almost quaint from the perspective of someone who understood her own strength. They parked outside the grey group home at dusk. Maya could smell the residents inside. 3 teenagers currently, their scents marking them as low-ranking pack members, probably orphans or unwanted children like she had been. The familiar anger rose in her chest at the thought of other kids going through what she had experienced. Mrs. Hendricks answered the door herself. She was a small woman in her 60s, grey-haired and soft-spoken, with kind eyes that had always made Maya want to trust her. Those eyes widened in shock when she saw Maya standing on the porch. "Maya," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" "You can't be here. If they find out—" "Who am I?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "You know, don't you? You've always known. So tell me the truth, Mrs. Hendricks. Tell me why you spent 17 years poisoning me." The older woman's face crumpled. She looked behind her, checking that none of the children were nearby, then stepped outside and closed the door. "Come around back," she said quietly, "where we won't be overheard." They walked to the small garden behind the group home, an overgrown space where vegetables struggled in the rocky soil. Mrs. Hendricks sat heavily on a weathered bench and buried her face in her hands for a long moment before speaking. "Your mother saved my life," she said finally. 20 years ago, I was scheduled to be exiled from my pack for failure to produce offspring. It was a death sentence dressed up as justice. Catherine Silvermoon heard about my case and intervened. She argued before the Interpack Council that infertility wasn't grounds for exile, that I had value beyond my reproductive capacity. She won, and they let me stay. But I was marked after that, always suspect, so I left voluntarily and came here, to Crescent Valley, where traditions run deep and questions are few. She looked up at Maya with red-rimmed eyes. "When Catherine showed up at my door in the middle of the night with a baby, I knew something terrible had happened. She was terrified, desperate. She said someone had killed Marcus and was hunting her, that she'd discovered proof of a conspiracy that went all the way to the top of the regional pack leadership. She said she needed someone she could trust absolutely, someone who was off the grid." "So you took me," Maya said. Mrs. Hendricks nodded. "She gave me instructions. Keep you hidden, keep you suppressed, never let anyone know who you really were. The suppressants were her idea, not mine. She said it was the only way to keep you safe, that if you started showing your power, they'd find you. She said she would come back for you once she'd exposed the conspiracy and made things safe." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "But she never came back. And I was left here with you, this beautiful child I was supposed to protect but could only hurt." Maya's anger wavered. This wasn't the simple story of malice she'd expected. "You could have told me," she said. "When I got older, you could have explained." "Catherine made me promise I wouldn't," Mrs. Hendricks said. "She said the knowledge would put you in danger, that the safest thing was for you to believe you were nobody special. And I'd seen what these people were capable of. I'd watched packs tear each other apart over power. I was terrified that if I told you, you'd try to reclaim your heritage and they'd kill you. So I kept silent, even though it destroyed me to watch you suffer. Eleanor, who had been standing back to give them space, spoke up. Did Catherine tell you who she suspected? Did she give you names? Mrs. Hendricks shook her head. She said the less I knew, the safer I'd be, but she did say something strange. She said, the betrayal comes from inside the trust circle. Watch for the one who gains most from loss. She looked at Maya. I never understood what she meant. Maya filed that away, knowing Eleanor and the others would want to analyze the cryptic message. Why did you let them exile me? She asked. If you were supposed to protect me, why didn't you fight for me when they brought those false charges? Because I saw an opportunity, Mrs. Hendricks said. You were turning 18 soon anyway. The suppressants were becoming less effective as you got older. I'd noticed you were starting to sense things, starting to show signs of your wolf trying to emerge. You needed to leave Crescent Valley, needed to get away from the pack structure entirely. When they decided to exile you, I thought maybe that was Catherine's plan all along. Get you out into the human world where you'd be truly hidden, and then somehow get you to the right people who could help you access your heritage safely. She pulled an envelope from her pocket. I've been carrying this for 17 years, waiting. Catherine gave it to me the night she left you. She made me promise to give it to you when the time was right, when you'd grown into your power and started asking questions. I think now is that time. Maya took the envelope with shaking hands. Her mother had touched this paper, had written whatever was inside. Eleanor put a gentle hand on her shoulder as Maya carefully opened it. Inside was a letter in elegant handwriting and a small key taped to the bottom of the page. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, it means I didn't survive to come back for you. It means you've grown up without me, and for that I am so desperately sorry. You deserved a mother who could raise you, teach you, love you openly. You deserved to know your father, to grow up in the pack that was meant to be yours. I grieve for what you've lost, for what I had to take from you to keep you alive. But I need you to know that every decision I made was because you are precious beyond measure. You are the future I was fighting for, the hope I held on to, even as everything fell apart. Your father and I dreamed of a world where power didn't mean tyranny, where being different wasn't a death sentence, where love mattered more than rank. That world is still possible, but only if you live to fight for it. The key opens a safe deposit box at First Pacific Bank in Seattle, box 247. Inside you'll find everything, the proof I gathered, the names of who's responsible. The evidence that will tear down everything they've built. I was on my way to deliver it to the Interpack Council when they caught up with me. I pray they never found the box, that it's still there waiting. You have your father's courage and my stubbornness. You have a mind capable of changing the world, but more than that, you have a heart that will always choose compassion over cruelty. Justice over convenience. Trust that heart, my love. It will guide you truly. I wish I could be there to watch you grow, to teach you to shift, to tell you stories of your father. I wish I could see the woman you'll become. But even without me, I know you'll be extraordinary. You already are. Find allies who honor what's right over what's easy. Trust carefully, but completely, once trust is earned. Stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And remember that you are Maya Silvermoon, daughter of Catherine and Marcus, heir to a legacy of courage and love. Never let anyone make you feel lesser. All my love, always and forever. Your mother Maya read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Her mother's voice came through so clearly in the words, strong and gentle at the same time, fierce in her love, determined to protect her child at any cost. Eleanor wrapped her in a hug while Maya cried, grieving for the mother she'd never known and celebrating the gift of these words. Seattle, Eleanor said softly when Maya had composed herself. "We need to get to that safe deposit box before anyone else figures out it exists." But Mrs. Hendricks grabbed Maya's hand. "Wait, you need to know something else. About 2 months after Catherine left you with me, a man came asking questions. He was official-looking, claimed to be from Child Protective Services doing a wellness check, but I knew he wasn't. He had that alpha energy, that predator awareness. He asked specifically if any infants had been abandoned recently. I lied, said no, and I think he believed me. But he warned me that if I ever heard of a child matching a certain description, female, dark hair, amber eyes, I was to report it immediately for a substantial reward." "What did he look like?" Eleanor demanded. "Average height, brown hair, late 40s, professional, polished. But what I remember most was his eyes, pale blue like ice, cold. And he had a scar here." She drew a line down her left cheek. "I got the impression he was someone used to getting what he wanted." Eleanor and Maya exchanged glances. "Richard Thorne," Eleanor said. "He has a scar exactly like that from a territorial fight 20 years ago. He came here himself, searching for Maya. That's how important finding her was to him." Maya's jaw clenched. The man who had likely ordered her parents killed had come looking for her personally, hunting an infant to complete his coup. The rage that filled her was cold and focused. This wasn't just about personal revenge anymore. This was about standing up to a tyrant who had maintained power through murder and fear. "Thank you," Maya said to Mrs. Hendricks, "for protecting me even though it meant hurting me. I understand why you did it, and I forgive you. My mother trusted you with her most precious possession, and you honored that trust the best way you knew how." Mrs. Hendricks clutched her hand. "Be careful, Maya. They're powerful and they're dangerous. Don't underestimate them." "I won't," Maya promised. "But they shouldn't underestimate me either. I'm Catherine Silvermoon's daughter, and it's time they remembered what that means." The drive to Seattle took 2 hours. Maya spent the time strategizing with Eleanor and making calls to their growing network of allies. Sarah, Marcus, and James agreed to meet them at a secure location after they retrieved whatever was in the safe deposit box. Everyone understood that once they saw what Catherine had discovered, there would be no going back. They would be committed to a course of action that would either change everything or get them all killed. First Pacific Bank was a modern building in downtown Seattle, all glass and steel. Maya walked in with her mother's key and the letter, her heart pounding. A bank manager, professional and courteous, verified her identity against the box records. Catherine had listed daughter as the authorized recipient and included the birthmark description as identification. Within 15 minutes, Maya was being escorted to a private viewing room with a metal box in front of her. Eleanor stood beside her as Maya opened it. Inside were file folders, thumb drives, photographs, and a journal bound in leather. Maya pulled out the journal first, recognizing her mother's handwriting on the first page. Evidence of corruption within the Regional Pack Council and specific documentation of Richard Thorne's involvement in systematic suppression and elimination of reform-minded pack leaders. Over the next hour, Maya and Eleanor went through everything. What they found was damning beyond anything they'd expected. Catherine had meticulously documented years of Thorne's crimes, arranged accidents that killed rival alphas, financial records showing bribes and embezzlement, communications proving he'd organized the attack on Marcus Silvermoon. But more than that, she'd uncovered a network. Thorne wasn't working alone. He had allies on the regional council, judges he'd bought, enforcers who carried out his orders. She had him, Eleanor breathed, looking at a particularly incriminating set of emails. She had absolute proof. This would have ended him, would have torn down his entire operation. "It still can," Maya said. We have everything she gathered plus 17 years of his continued crimes. If we present this to the right people, the regional council is compromised, Eleanor interrupted. Half the people on it are in Thorne's pocket, according to these files. If we go to them, we'll be signing our death warrants. Maya thought hard, her mind racing through possibilities. Then she remembered something Sarah had mentioned in passing. The National PAC Coalition, she said. Sarah said there's a national organization that oversees regional councils, investigates corruption. They're neutral, outside the local power structures. If we take this evidence to them, Thorne can't touch it. Eleanor's eyes widened. That might work. The NPC has jurisdiction to investigate and prosecute inter-PAC crimes, and their director, Amanda Frost, has a reputation for integrity. If we can get this evidence to her directly, she'd have to act on it. They called their allies and arranged to meet at James's law office in Tacoma, halfway between Seattle and Portland. By midnight, the whole group was gathered around a conference table, looking at Catherine's evidence spread out before them. The mood was somber and determined. "This is everything we need," James said, his lawyer's eyes scanning the documents. Financial crimes, conspiracy to commit murder, corruption of official proceedings, abuse of power. The charges go on and on. But Eleanor's right. If we go through normal channels, Thorne will know before we get halfway to filing. He's had 17 years to cement his power and build his network. We need to go straight to the top. "I have a contact at the NPC," Marcus said. "Former military, stationed at their headquarters in Denver. If I reach out to him, explain what we have, he might be able to arrange a secure meeting with Director Frost. It would have to be fast, though. Once we make this move, Thorne will respond with everything he's got." Sarah leaned forward. "Then we need to be ready for the response. Maya, you're the key to this. You're Catherine's daughter, the living proof that Thorne's coup wasn't complete, but you're also the most vulnerable. If something goes wrong, you'll be the first target." Maya looked around the table at the faces of people who had committed themselves to justice, people who were willing to risk everything because it was right. She thought about her mother writing these documents, gathering this proof, knowing it might cost her life. She thought about the years she'd spent believing she was nothing, powerless, worthless. And she thought about the thousands of wolves living under Thorne's corrupt rule, suffering because good people had been too afraid to challenge him. "I'm not hiding anymore," she said firmly. "My mother didn't keep me alive just so I could play it safe. She kept me alive so I could finish what she started. We do this right, we do it smart, but we do it. Whatever happens, happens." The decision made, they spent the rest of the night planning. Marcus would contact his NPC connection first thing in the morning and arrange the meeting. James would prepare the legal documentation to accompany the evidence, putting it in proper format for investigation and prosecution. Sarah would coordinate safe houses and backup plans in case they needed to go into hiding. Eleanor would stay with Maya, ensuring her safety and helping her prepare for what was coming. By dawn, they had a plan. By sunset the next day, they had confirmation. Director Amanda Frost would meet with them in 3 days in a secure location in Denver. The meeting would be confidential, and she promised protection for everyone involved in bringing evidence forward. 3 days, Maya said, looking at the message. 3 days until we expose 17 years of corruption and murder. 3 days until I reclaim my mother's legacy. But Thorne had spies everywhere, and secrets have a way of leaking. On the second day before the Denver meeting, Marcus received a warning from a trusted source inside the Cascade PAC. Thorne knew something was happening. He didn't have specifics yet, but he knew there was movement against him, and he was mobilizing his forces to find out who and what. "We need to move up the timeline," Marcus said urgently during an emergency call. "If we wait 2 more days, Thorne will figure out what we're doing and disappear the evidence or eliminate witnesses. We need to go now. Maya made the decision. We leave tonight. Drive straight through to Denver. If we travel through the night, we'll be there by morning. Director Frost said she could meet on short notice if necessary. Eleanor, can you reach her? Within hours, everything was in motion. Elena confirmed that Director Frost would meet them the next morning instead of in 2 days. The team packed up the evidence, arranged for secure transportation, and prepared to leave. Maya felt the weight of the moment. This was it. Everything she'd learned about herself, everything her mother had fought for, everything that had been stolen from her, it all came down to the next 24 hours. They traveled in 2 cars, taking different routes to Denver for security. Maya rode with Eleanor, the evidence locked in a case between them. As they drove through the night, Maya kept expecting something to go wrong, for them to be stopped, attacked, intercepted. But the miles passed quietly, the highway stretching ahead of them toward justice. They arrived in Denver at 6 in the morning and went straight to the secure location Director Frost had specified, a government building in the heart of the city, protected and neutral ground. Amanda Frost met them personally, a tall woman in her 50s, with steel-grey hair and eyes that missed nothing. She listened as they laid out everything, examined the evidence with the careful attention of someone who understood its significance, and asked pointed questions that showed a sharp, legal mind. "This is extensive," she said finally, looking up from the documents, "and absolutely damning. If even half of this is verified, which I suspect it will be, Richard Thorne and several members of the Regional Council will be facing multiple life sentences. But I need you to understand the position this puts you all in. The moment I open this investigation officially, you'll all be under threat. Thorne has resources, connections, and a proven willingness to kill to protect his power. I can offer protection, but it won't be absolute." "We understand," Maya said, "but this can't wait anymore. Every day he remains in power, people suffer. My mother died, gathering this proof. I'm not going to let that be for nothing." Director Frost studied her for a long moment, and Maya saw recognition in her eyes. "You look like Catherine," she said softly. "I met her once, at a regional summit. She challenged me in front of everyone about the NPC's failure to protect lower-ranked pack members from abuse. She was right, and I was defensive. I've regretted that moment for years. I'm glad to have the chance to do better now." She stood and extended her hand to Maya. "I'm opening a formal investigation as of this moment. Richard Thorne and his co-conspirators are now under NPC authority. I'll be issuing warrants within the hour. In the meantime, I want all of you in protective custody until we can ensure your safety. Are you willing to cooperate fully?" "Completely," Eleanor said, speaking for the group. "Whatever you need from us, you have it." The next hours were a blur of official statements, evidence logging, and coordination with NPC investigators. Director Frost moved with impressive speed and efficiency, clearly aware that time was critical. By noon, warrants had been issued. By evening, NPC enforcers were executing them across the Pacific Northwest. Maya watched the news coverage from the safe house where Director Frost had placed them. Richard Thorne being arrested at his Cascade Pack headquarters, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. Council members being led away in restraints, journalists scrambling to understand what was happening. The story was breaking huge. Corruption at the highest levels of the regional pack government, evidence of murders and conspiracy going back nearly 2 decades, all exposed by documents compiled by the murdered First Luna and revealed by her surviving daughter. "Your mother would be proud," Sarah said, sitting beside Maya as they watched. "She'd be so proud of you." Maya felt tears on her cheeks. She wasn't sure if they were from grief, relief, or some complex mixture of both. Her mother had fought and died for this moment, and now, 17 years later, justice was finally coming. It wasn't complete yet, but it was beginning. The trial took 6 months. Maya testified, telling the court about her suppressed childhood, her banishment, her journey to discovering the truth. She presented her mother's evidence, explaining each document with clarity that impressed even the most skeptical judges. The defense tried to discredit her, to claim she was an imposter seeking attention, but DNA testing confirmed what her amber eyes had already declared. She was Catherine Silvermoon's daughter. When the verdict came down, it was unanimous. Richard Thorne was sentenced to life imprisonment for conspiracy to commit murder, corruption, and abuse of power. 3 regional council members received similar sentences. Others were stripped of their positions and banned from PAC leadership permanently. But the trial's end wasn't the conclusion Maya had imagined. Director Frost approached her privately afterwards with an unexpected offer. "The Silvermoon PAC territory has been held in trust since your parents' deaths," she said. "Legally, as Catherine and Marcus's daughter, it belongs to you. The NPC is prepared to restore your family's PAC and recognize you as Alpha. You'd have full authority to rebuild it according to your mother's vision." Maya stood on the land that had been her parents' a month later, Eleanor beside her. The territory was beautiful, forests and mountains, a small town where PAC members had once lived in community. It had been abandoned for years, left to decay after Thorne absorbed it into his own holdings. "I could rebuild this," Maya said quietly. "Create the kind of PAC my mother envisioned. A place where rank doesn't determine worth, where everyone has value, where someone like me would never have been suppressed and cast aside." "You could," Eleanor agreed, "and you'd do it brilliantly. But is that what you want?" Maya thought about Portland, about the diner and her tiny apartment. She thought about the human world where she'd learned to survive, where she'd discovered who she was without PAC politics defining her. She thought about all the wolves out there like she'd been, suppressed, marginalized, told they were nothing. "I want to help people," she said finally, "but not by being alpha of one PAC. I want to work with the NPC, advocating for wolves who don't fit the traditional hierarchy. I want to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. My mother's legacy isn't just about one PAC, it's about changing the whole system." She turned to Eleanor with a small smile. "But I'll keep this land. Make it a sanctuary for wolves who need a place to belong, who've been rejected or hurt. No ranks, no hierarchy, just community. My mother would like that, I think." Eleanor hugged her. "She would love that, and she'd love the woman you've become." Maya looked out over the territory, feeling her wolf settle contentedly inside her. She'd been banished as an orphaned Omega, unwanted and powerless. She'd returned as Maya Silvermoon, daughter of the first Luna, carrying her mother's dream of a better world forward. The journey had been painful, but it had also been necessary. Everything she'd survived had prepared her for this moment. She thought of her mother's letter, the words she'd read so many times they were memorized. "Trust that heart, my love. It will guide you truly." Her heart had guided her here, not to power or revenge, but to purpose, and that, Maya knew, was the greatest legacy her mother could have left her.